Great to be with you all this morning and in Europe this afternoon. So today I want to talk about death. You know, death is such a bugaboo in our society. And people often forget that one big Dharma gateway is death. It can offer us a path to awakening, no less than repeated experiences of samadhi or the desire, effort to want to relieve our own suffering, or even Mando Zen. So how can understanding death lead us more fully to clear, deep heart mind, or an experience of unreasonable joy? In short, what is it that death has to teach us? You know, in a sense, we practice death all the time as it is. Certainly in Zazen, we practice dying to each moment and awakening to each new moment. The trick is to actually translate this into everyday life. You could say that each moment already has its own life cycle. Something springs into awareness, is alive in our senses, and then dies and is gone. Birth, life, death. Arising, existing, extinguishing. Birth, life, death. Now, of course, this happens on a micro scale in milliseconds, but it also happens, of course, in seconds and in minutes and in hours. And it also happens on the greatest macro scale. We know that at some point, our star, the sun, will die out, and with it, in all likelihood, most, if not all, life on the planet. And we also know that with unregulated consumption of carbon on the planet, we know that we're already entering a new phase of global warmth, bringing us 2 to 3, maybe even 4 degrees centigrade warmer temperatures by the year 2050. And with it, melting polar ice caps, rising sea levels, drought and devastation in many areas, too much rain in others. Now, I've read estimates that say mass starvations and mass migrations and resulting wars will kill as many as 80% of the nearly 9 billion people presently alive on the planet. So that by the century's end, only about 1.5 billion people will likely be alive. And this is, of course, not to mention accelerated species extinction everywhere, human, animal, plant death, on a scale that is really almost too great to imagine. So, along with it, whole systems of human social interaction may die as well. Democracy, which is actually a relatively recent human experience, it's only a few hundred years old, may actually be the first to go. Now, worldwide, it's easy to see that the era of what's called neo-feudalism is already arriving, whether they're called dictators, authoritarians, oligarchs, military juntas, or gang bosses, and whether it's the Mexican drug cartel or ISIS or communist China or presidents in the UK, Hungary, Turkey, Russia, Brazil, India, Pakistan, Iran, Syria, the list goes on, and of course, including the US. These are controlling, even totalitarian shadow instincts in leadership, intent on superseding previous democratic rule or simply preventing its arrival. So, how is it possible to begin to accept all of this death, all of this change with equanimity? I love a popular saying nowadays, if you're not depressed, you're not paying attention. So how can we maintain a settled mind in these extremely unsettled times? Now, the answer for me starts with acceptance. This too is true. This too is true. And this too is true. When I, a bodhisattva of no rank, look through awakened eyes at the real form of this universe, all that appears is the never-ending, never-failing manifestation of the mysterious unfolding of truth. In any event, in any moment, and in any place, none can be other than the marvelous revelation of the interplay of this glorious light. Now, these are great and powerful words, but how do we maintain the depth of equanimity that is evidenced in that understanding? It's truth, and more truth and more truth. Life is truth playing itself out over and over and over and over again. So in short, we have to recognize and let go of that tendency of mind that says, no, this can't be. This shouldn't be. This is wrong. Now, the truth of what is can never be wrong. It's only our habits of mind that tell us, no, this isn't so, it can't be so, it shouldn't be so. Now, is anybody else challenged by that one besides myself? Okay, I'm not alone here. So that's the background story of my life. Now, I'm also reminded that there is no ignorance and there's no end to ignorance. Now, in times like these, it may only be the latter part that rings true. There's no end to ignorance. It seems like it's everywhere, right? So certainly it's evidenced worldwide in political leadership. But the first part for me also rings true. There is no ignorance, which for me serves as a reminder that there is only unfolding truth with endless causality of previous conditions. This happened, then this happened, then this happened, back through an endless caravan of causality. So form equals emptiness, emptiness equals form. Both of these are, of course, true. And can we accept the arising and disintegration of each new form? Now, the biggest order of arising and disintegration that we're facing as a collective, as a Sangha, is, of course, Jumpo's impending death, whether this year, next year, or 5 years from now. There is no aging leading to old age and death, and no end to aging leading to old age and death. So I'd actually like to share a few things about Jumpo dying. First of all, I gotta start by saying it doesn't serve any of us to pretend that it's not happening. It doesn't serve any of us to not talk about it because it's somehow impolite or disrespectful. It's the truth of what is. We can love him and recognize it's ending. Change is coming. So we need to begin to think through and plan for what happens next. What does this actually mean for our Sangha? It's time for each of us to take our seat. Now, personally, I wish Jumpo was sharing more with us about his wishes for the future of the Sangha. But unless I missed the memo, I haven't seen a whole lot. So that said, it's really good to see the nonprofit organization itself is taking solid direction under Ekai's leadership. And hopefully we're becoming an even more sustainable nonprofit institution than we have been. But we need to also think about spiritual leadership of the Sangha. And I got a glimpse of what that future might look like on our recent Hollow Bones retreat at Sonoma Mountain Zen Center in January. And Engo did a wonderful job sitting as Tanto, really taking his seat and providing guidance. And we all got a nice taste of Engo's flavor of teaching. But all of us on staff chipped in, and we offered suggestions, and we offered improvements to him. And that's what provided me with a really clear vision of the future. partly it's about how we all need to develop our own flavor of leadership, our own style of Dharma delivery. We need to recognize that each of us will be different, that there will be no absolute definitive way to do it, because historically, of course, Jumpo is and was that standard. Not only will he not be with us, but he is also leaving us with conflicting memories of how to do it, of how he did it. And I already saw this occur multiple times on our retreat. Assuming for the moment he was always consistent, we will still have conflicting memories of what his policies, decisions, and choices were. But it's also important to recognize that he wasn't always consistent. So we'll have even further grounds for disputing things. So whether sitting in the Tanto seat or not, each of us must bring our own unique understanding and flavor to retreats and gatherings and discussions. And we must listen to and be in dialogue with and learn to respect all the different voices from our own. In the end, in fact, it might well be the collective mind that actually points the way forward. Which, to my thinking, is maybe exactly as it should be as we continue to migrate from an Asian tradition steeped in Japanese culture to one that is truly Western. Now, Jumpo already made huge leaps in bridging that gap, and it may be incumbent on all of us to continue to cross that bridge. In fact, I'm reminded of the Dalai Lama and something that he talked about 7 years ago. He talked about his next incarnation. And, leaving aside for the moment the whole issue of reincarnation, he said that he may be born into 3 or 4 different bodies, born in different countries around the planet. Now, I'm sure he said that actually for multiple reasons, but one is clearly so that the Chinese cannot claim to have his one single reincarnation, born in Tibet, and either imprison him or make him their puppet like they have so many other Tibetan leaders. I believe he also said it, though, in recognition that the long-standing Eastern tradition of the all-knowing, all-seeing guru, which is fraught with its own downsides and shadows, needs to transform into a more democratic and collective Western model. So I believe he said it in recognition of the importance of community, of Sangha, of the collective brain alongside the power and unique brilliance of the individual. In fact, community, as I see it, is the way, in fact, maybe the only way forward in terms of survival on the planet for human beings. The cultural, historical model of the standalone individual promulgated and supported by capitalism and the Enlightenment. And by Enlightenment, I'm talking about the Renaissance era philosophy. I'm not talking about Buddhist Enlightenment. This is also dying. As someone wise once said, we either learn to live together or we'll die alone. So communities of some self-sufficiency, complete with holistic cultural practices, with renewable energy, water, and food sources, and real defense plans, are going to be the only sustainable counterweights to these neo-feudal forces, which are already taking shape and beginning to control large populations on the planet. And we also know what happens when a single charismatic leader is sole spiritual leader of that community, with no one and nothing to check his or her shadows. So it's the teachings themselves, Zen and meditation and Dharma and Sangha, that must become the pillars in that equation of holistic cultural practices. Personally, I feel there is absolutely no sustainable future without Dharma at the center of culture. Which brings me back to us, Atta Dipa. You are this light. We are this light. Meditative awareness, clear intention, acting wisely, compassionately, and skillfully are this practice. Or as I actually like to simplify it, attention plus intention. So when we put the two together, we get still mind. Attention plus intention equals still mind. So my invitation is for all of us to rest in that. Keep that intention of the collective, keep that attention to every single moment, and we can rest in still mind. Now, if it's possible, I'd like to end by just sharing with you this one beautiful song, poem from one of my teachers and heroes, Allen Ginsberg. It's called Father Death Blues. So let me see if I can just share this with you on my screen here. Can you all see that?
Hey, Father Death, I'm flying home. Hey, poor man, you're all alone. Hey, old daddy, I know where I'm going. Father Death, don't cry anymore. Mama's there underneath the floor. Brother Death, please mind restore. Old Auntie Death, I hear your groans, old Uncle Death. I see your bones, oh Sister Death. How sweet your moans, oh children deaths. Go breathe your breaths, sobbing breaths will ease your deaths. Pain is gone, tears take the rest. Genius Death, your art is done. Lover Death, your body's gone. Father Death, I'm coming home. Guru Death, your words are true. Teacher Death, I do thank you for inspiring me to sing this blues. Buddha Death, I wake with you. Dharma Death, your mind is new. Sangha Death, will work it through. Suffering is what was born. Ignorance made me forlorn. Tearful truths I cannot scorn. Father breath, once more farewell. Birth you gave was no thing ill. My heart is still, as time will tell.
So I thank you for your kind attention, and maybe we could just sit for a minute.
Let's do that. Thank you, Simha. That was much gratitude for your sharing and your wisdom.